Hello and welcome to yet another live chat here on LinkedIn Live called Hello America's What's Cooking. My name is Xenia Paula and I'm the Regional Director for ICA North America. It's my great pleasure to welcome everybody to our regular live chats, which I mentioned are here every Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern. And I know we already have an audience which follows us every Thursday. So please feel free to pop in your comments, your hellos, and your questions for my guest today. And without further ado, I would like to welcome Rodney Sharples.
Well, hi there. Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. And Rodney, the two of us have only met virtually and only very recently. So I really appreciate you being willing to pop on the show with me. But before we get started, could you just quickly introduce yourself so people know who you are?
Absolutely, I'm happy to. So as Sandra said, my name is Rodney Sharples. I'm a former executive in the retail marketing and technology space, been in operational roles and experience roles. Currently, I'm working in a small boutique, actually myself, consulting organization where we focus on the betterment of companies and individuals through emotional intelligence, operational excellence, and also through awareness and leadership with DE&I.
And we are jumping right into our topic of the day, which is DE&I, and how can we use this and your vast experience in leadership and DE&I to share with our audience what are some of the key elements they should keep in mind when it comes to hiring and be more inclusive?
Sure. I think one of the key things about hiring with DE&I, and this has to go to the broader aspects of the organizations, it's not about ticking a box. This is really not making DE&I a core principle. It's not about hiring specifically for DE&I. It's really making sure that the leadership of an organization has the culture built in that rolls directly into the hiring practices. And one of the key things that's a huge element is making sure that for every role, not only do you have the skills, but you also have the competencies and capabilities required for that role.
And before we go into our next question, I just wanted to acknowledge a couple of our dear friends in the audience. Glenn is saying hello and welcome ECA community and welcome Rodney. He is our board member from North America. And another RAM Council member, Montana, is saying hello and what a couple of cool cats. Thank you, Montana. That's great.
Thank you.
And also regards from Peter, who is our connection through the RAM Council. And you mentioned a few elements which are really important. And one thing I want to talk about is how important it is not just to tick the box and go to the right person, get the right expertise for the job itself. But I think if we can pull from your personal experience, you have experienced personally through your life and through your family, how important it is to be accepted of people and what they stand for. Could you share a little bit more, because you've also written an article on that topic?
Sure, I'm happy to, and thank you for raising that. I appreciate it. Just a little bit of a sidebar. You know, the reason why I wrote that article and I got into some of my own personal life is I felt it was time that I added my voice to the bigger discussion, bigger conversation. A lot of times executives don't talk about DE&I, they don't talk about their personal experiences, they don't talk about being part of the LGBTQ plus, I know there's a lot more alphabet, but I'm just stopping there, community, to make sure that we start to represent that there's nothing wrong with people of otherness. And it's for me personally, when I came out in my late teens, I ran into a lot of very, I'd say common, but not as unfortunate situations. For example, my father actually legally disowned me. He chose it was better off not to have a son and decided to pursue his life without me as part of that, unfortunately. Additionally, another challenge is this may be a little bit sensitive for a lot of people, but my grandfather actually almost followed through with mortal injury against me, just because being a gay male in his family was an unacceptable concept to him. So those are rather extreme aspects, but for me, they help me become who I am. And I bring that forth into the whole concept of DE&I. It's not about otherness. It's the opportunity of that we have a group of individuals that just need to be individuals in a common space. And who they are doesn't matter. It's about what they can provide and how they can drive the betterment of humanity.
And you touched on some of your personal challenges, but what are some of the biggest challenges you have seen through your various roles about being providing a more inclusive work environment?
Well, unfortunately, I have seen in my personal environment where organizations chose to not have an inclusive environment, and they would hire based on a physical trait, based on a very specific level of sameness, where people have the same characteristics, the same background, the same experience inside an organization. And frankly, they lose out, in my opinion, and I've seen it. For example, one organization I was at many, many years ago, before the real push for DE&I came forth, they were challenged to hire people who were not native English speakers and had the ability to speak additional languages. Well, as our market began to change, technology started to come in, we needed the ability to speak multiple languages because our customer base was no longer US English based, and we had that ability to interact on a global scale.
And you're touching on it straight away. Have you seen, because you've worked also outside of the US, does the D&I topic and work environment differ in the US from the rest of the world?
I think it does. And to be very sensitive to this topic, because it is a very, I say, heated conversation, especially in the United States, you think about other parts of the world. Europe is a huge progressor when it comes to the concept of DE&I. They can look very clearly beyond the attributes of who a person is to their core capabilities and competencies. Some countries have actually made legislation to require a certain level of equality and inclusion inside the workplace. The United States is a continually changing, continually melding organization, if you would, where we have a constant sway in our opinions. So in my experience, yes, having worked in Europe, very much more progressive. I also was fortunate to be an expatriate living in South America, where it was a different model where people were required to place their photo on the top of their resume. And often we would hire somebody based on a physical attribute or a physical descriptor. We didn't really read the rest of the resume. And then again, back in the United States, although we have LinkedIn changes the world, for a lot of positive, but we have to be conscientious, especially domestically, that it provides the opportunity, a much easier opportunity to not have DE&I.
And talking about LinkedIn, I see my colleague Monica was asking where that article we were referencing could be found. It is actually on LinkedIn. Was that a publicly available article?
It is. It's actually on my LinkedIn profile, and interestingly, the title of it is "I Don't Get This DE&I Stuff." This was actually a real conversation that I had with a mentee. We were talking about business, and he actually asked me that question, and it prompted me to be able to respond in the best way I could by providing him context of real life situations for me.
And talking about that real life situation. If it was a mentee, was it a younger person?
Actually, yes.
Asking you that?
Millennial generation. And the individual is a wonderful person, very knowledgeable, educated, all around great person. But of the millennial generation, which frankly took me off guard. I was expecting more of an engaged cultural aspect from that generation. And I work with a lot of different generations, and the younger we go today, the more understanding, the more diverse, the more concept of non-binary in all aspects of just being human is becoming more and more prevalent.
Did that surprise you that somebody from that generation didn't get it? When it's in a time when we are so much more exposed to this topic?
It really did. And I'm happy that the mentee was comfortable enough with me, fully knowing my orientation, to ask the question. And I believe in having, when I'm mentoring and coaching with individuals, I'm very conscientious not to influence with my own personal experience, my personal opinion. I want to make sure that I'm providing the best business advice. But this particular example, I was honored that he asked the question and was very receptive to the concept. And at the very end, literally said, I get it now.
Okay, thank you so much. And I see, Peter, thank you. You are also posting in the chat where that article can be found. Peter is our little chat monster or expert. We've touched on a lot of the negative stuff, but the reason for our chat today.
I think we lost you there, Sanjay. I think the reason for our chat today is to really talk about some of the biggest challenges and opportunities. How can an organization really benefit from DE&I? Really, I think an organization needs to start thinking that they're a culture of cultures, and really to be able to have that ability to look beyond and have that diversity level inside an organization. It allows organizations to have a much wider view on a whole wide range of perspectives. It gives them greater context, gives them greater discussion, so they actually are more productive, better decisioning, they handle risk better, and they're actually a lot more, I say profitable, but they're a lot more fiscally conscientious because of a diverse background and different perspectives.
And when we were chatting before we went live, we actually touched upon, between the two of us, we've lived in so many countries. Do you think that really being exposed to all of those different cultures has opened us up to being more diverse and
Absolutely.
inclusive?
I really think so. For me personally, having been to so many different countries, lived outside the United States 3 times, really has provided me a different perspective. The United States is a very unique country. There's a lot of great opportunity, but it is also a different type of country. And stepping outside of our own comfort zone, outside of our own actual boundaries, I think gives someone a perspective, because at that moment, they're the outsider. They're the one who's not the same. And it provides them that perspective of, I can't speak this language. I don't understand the currency. I can't get from point A to point B. I have to rely on other people, and I have to be more open and adaptive and really interact with people and be inclusive into their culture.
And I don't know if anybody in the audience has any questions, but I would like to know, do you have any specific positive examples to demonstrate where you could see, oh yes, because of this organization being much more inclusive, that they've prospered?
Actually, and this is probably a very interesting perspective. I'll give a very unique one. So my partner of 23 years is actually a law enforcement officer. And most recently, he was a lieutenant for a rather large educational institution in Atlanta, their police department. And for the very first time, this police department has a transgendered officer on staff. And this individual has provided a rather large gravity aspect and has connected to the student population in ways that others have not been able to. A lot of people don't realize that mental health concerns inside the student population is a big issue with institutions. High pressure, high stress, and having someone that has a greater level of relatability, as this transgender officer has helped the Institute significantly with having better community policing.
That's an amazing example, and thanks for sharing it with us. I'm hoping we have provided a little bit of food for thought and also inspired people to start asking some of those questions and start looking at the positive impact of being more diverse and inclusive in the workplace. And since we are on the What's Cooking show, do you have any favorite foods. We were talking Argentina, we were talking Chile, Canada. Any recipes, restaurants you want to share?
Well, interestingly, so I grew up cooking with my now, gosh, she's going to be 101 years old, my Italian grandmother. So as you know, with those types of families, you are always in the kitchen. Interestingly, Italian food is not my favorite. For me, one of my favorite is actually an ahi tuna steak that is flash-seared with wasabi, with some sticky rice, pickled ginger, radicchio salad, and of course, sake, and I like it cold.
Great tip and very healthy. And you made me super hungry. And here on the West Coast, it is time for lunch. Thank you again so much, Rodney, for joining me today. And thank you, everybody who was watching today. Anybody who wants to come and be my guest, please email me at xenia.p@ecaworld.org. And also, please feel free to connect with Rodney on LinkedIn. He's happy to connect and continue the conversation. Thank you, everybody, very much. And thank you, Rodney.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.